Had a couple of questions about the weather yesterday. No issues today. It's beautiful. Not that we went outside, but just traveling back and forth. Okay.
Coach, first question right here in the front row.
Afternoon, Bill. Mike Petralia, CLNS Media. Willie McGinnis was talking this morning about prep for this week, installs and what have you. And he said if you didn't see something performed at a high proficiency, you'd take it right out before the game. I'm curious from you what kind of proficiency you need to see in an install offensively, defensively, even special teams to trust it on game day.
Right. Well, you know, we don't have a lot of plays left in our season, so we want to try to run the best ones we can, run good ones. So if there's one that we don't feel good about, we probably have enough other things to use in place of it. So I think everybody wants to feel good about the plays that we call, the coaches, the players, you know, and feel like we can go out there and have our best execution, which we'll need against the Rams. So that's the point we're trying to get to.
Roberto Silva from TV Azteca, Noreste. Coach, I have read some of your books about your bio, the difficult path that took you to get here. And I want to know if you will write a book someday about your plays, fundamentals, and all that once you get retired.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, right now I'm just trying to get ready for the Rams, and that's a full-time job. So we'll worry about that other stuff some other time. Thanks. Would you buy one? All right. All right.
Coach, right here, James Duthie from TSN in Canada. You've always had success with run-pass balance, but the last couple of months, and in the playoffs in particular, you developed the smash-mouth running game, gobbling up big yards and eating huge chunks of clock. How did this develop? How important has it been to you getting here? How big is it on Sunday?
Well, I don't know about Sunday. We'll see how the game goes. You know, there have been games where we've run the ball, we've thrown the ball, we've been balanced. So I don't think that's as important as moving the ball and scoring points. So if we move the ball and score points, I think we'll feel good about our offensive production. If we don't, then we won't. It's not about stats. It's about really production.
Matt Verderam, fan-sided. Coach, your teams have always had very scheme-flexible defenses, even dating back to when you were a coordinator with the Giants. How much does versatility go into when you search for players, and what goes into making a game plan week in, week out when you have such versatility in the way you play?
Well, what goes into the game plan is identifying the things that your opponent does well and how you feel like you need to play them, and then utilizing the personnel that you have to try to defend it. And sometimes that depends on what you do, depends on how versatile or how much experience your players have and what they're able to handle. Again, as I said earlier, you want to do something that you feel confident in, the players feel confident in. It's something that we've done before or that we know how to do, at least the fundamentals. Maybe it's two things put together to create something new, but at least we've done the basics and the fundamentals of them before. So, so versatility is you know, good. I mean, look, we face a lot of different types of offenses throughout the league, and you need some versatile players on the field, but you also need you know, good players who can, you know, do certain things. If they can do them very well, they don't have to be versatile. They can just do their things. You don't need 11 versatile players, but you know, you're going to need a couple. And that's true, really, I think, in all three phases of the game. But I don't think that's a must for everybody. But if you don't have a few guys that can do that, then you become a little bit inflexible, and eventually there'll be some matchups that'll, I think, give you problems.
Hey, Coach. Alan Bell, 24/7 Sports. When you're facing a team that has multiple talented running backs, setting a plan, do you approach those running backs individually, or do you look maybe the offensive line scheme of how they're blocking? How do you go about that? And I understand that, you know, it's kind of a game plan question too, but just how do you approach that?
Yeah, no, well, look, we need to know every player that's on the active roster, and then the ones that get eliminated on the inactive list before the game. We don't have to worry about them for that game, but the guys that are on the active roster, we need to know them all. They're players are different. They have different skills, and knowing which player's in the game, and if that player has more of a tendency in one particular thing than another, or the way the team utilizes that player in one way or another, then that's important for us to know. So, yeah, absolutely. We definitely need to know who's in the game. I'm sure a lot of their plays are the same plays for both guys, and do they run them the same? There are some similarities. I think there are some differences. Again, we need to know those differences, at least to prepare for them. And then, as the game unfolds, we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, we have to know everybody that's on the active roster. That's our job.
Tony Grossi, ESPN Cleveland. Hi, Bill.
Tony?
How would you describe the contributions Josh Gordon made to the Patriots season, and would you be willing to welcome him back if he were ever reinstated?
Yeah, I think we've already talked about that, Tony. And right now I'm just focused on the players that are here and that'll be playing in this game.
We're going to the other side of the room here.
Bill, Brian Costello, New York Post. What does Trey Flowers bring to your defense?
Well, Trey's been a very productive player for us for the last 3 years. Missed most of his rookie year, but he's been very productive. He's a versatile player. He does a lot of things well. He's a great worker, great teammate, guy that everybody has a lot of confidence in. He really works very hard to excel at his job, both knowing what to do, reading his keys, and the techniques and fundamentals that he can exercise in a lot of different positions. He's played everywhere from the nose to 9 techniques, so he's been a very key player for us and a very good player.
We're going to the center.
Hi, Richard Farrago, Sport 1 TV Hungary. One of the big mysteries with the Patriots games, if you are winning the coin toss, that you want the ball or you defer, what are the deciding factors about this question?
Yeah, the circumstances of that particular game, so our opponent and all the things that go with the things that are part of that game. So we talk about that each week and make that decision independently of other weeks and other games. We try to do what we feel like is best for that particular game for whatever the combination of reasons are, but they're different every week because our opponents are different and sometimes the circumstances of the game are different.
Coach Tyler Englander, WBN. Can you talk about the differences and challenges in preparing for 2 running backs, C.J. Anderson and Todd Gurley?
Yeah, I mean, as we said, both those players are outstanding players. A lot of the plays are the same, if not all of them. They may have separate plays for each guy, but there would be no way for us to know that. We'd have to anticipate that each player could run the other plays the other one runs. They're both good downhill runners. They're strong. They have good balance. They fight for extra yards. They're hard to tackle. They're tough in the open field. So they've done a good job for them.
Coach, Matt Birch, the Sports Daily. You've done a great job. Your staff and the offensive line has done a great job keeping Brady upright this year, or this playoffs. He's been hit 3 times in the last 90 pass plays. Talk about maybe some of the challenges the Rams' defensive front presents and how you'll be able to kind of keep Brady upright.
Well, pass protection is it'll be a big challenge for us this week against the Rams. They have a great pass rush. They have a lot of different players that can put pressure on the passer. Of course, it starts with Donald, but it's a lot more than him. Guys like Sue can line up anywhere from on the nose to a 3 technique to sometimes out in a 5 or a little bit wider than that. So they move those players around a little bit. They also, have some, blitz packages that affect your protection. So we'll have to do a good job of all those. It'll take good teamwork across the board, our offensive line, our quarterback, our receivers getting open so we don't have to hold the ball, tight ends and so forth. So that'll be a combination of things, but it's obviously difficult. They're very good. Wade does a real good job with his rush packages and finding matchups, creating problems for the offense based on the type of protection or the type of plays that they run in certain situations, and he makes those matchups tough. So we'll have to, it'll be a battle. It'll be a battle.
Going to the left side of the room.
Coach, you've said, Nick Padone, Cleveland Sports Talk, you've said that the Rams have potential to be explosive in just about everything that they do. With that in mind, what's the mindset like for you as a coach in trying to make this thing a shootout of a game or try to win a close scoring affair?
Well, I mean, it starts with not giving up a lot of, easy plays. I mean, they've scored 5 times on defense and special teams this year, so they can block a punt, they can return a punt, they can, Kansas City game, strip sack the quarterback and walk it in for a touchdown. So, Talib, Peters, those 2 guys can very dangerous back there to pick the ball off and run in for a touchdown. So, I would start with that. I mean, when I say they're explosive on all 3 phases of the game, obviously offensively they can score from anywhere with a number of different guys, but I mean defensively they scored on turnovers, and in the kicking game they're very explosive and dangerous too. So there's no play really to relax on these guys. They can do a lot of damage in a lot of different ways, and we're going to have to play 60 minutes of good football. I mean, you screw up one play and they'll have it in the end zone.
Coach William Benditson, how you doing?
Good. Good.
I was just wondering, one of the things I find remarkable about you, like me, I have a love of history, and you do too, for both the game and American history too. Where did you sort of develop that love of history, and does it help you as a coach, given your vast knowledge of football history? Seem to know everything, a lot of what's gone on in the game the past 50 years.
Do I take that as a compliment, or okay? I guess I've been around a long time. Well, obviously, we'll start with my parents. I mean, they're both educators. We had a lot of books and always read a lot about history and visited historical places. Certainly Annapolis is one, but going to Gettysburg and all the Washington things, that was always field trips and so forth. But from football standpoint, my dad collected football books from the time I can remember, just as a little kid, and then I sort of got into that too. I'd find books for him, or he'd have doubles and so forth, and so we ended up with, I think it was like 4,000 books or something like that. There was a lot of them. Anyway, so from a football historical basis, that was the books there, and then that led to, a lot of other conversations about the books that were written, who they were written about, or what the subject was and so forth. Certainly football coach, and the books he collected were really old books. I mean, I'd say, he didn't want anything really after 1960. It was, and there's surprisingly quite a few books that were football books that were written in that era. So, talking about the people that were featured in those books, people like, Amos Alonzo Stagg, who coached Coach Harden, who was the head coach at Navy, and we talked about him yesterday. Zupke, Yost, Camp. I mean, you can go all the way back into the 1900s, the teams, and all the pro coaches, Hallis and Lambeau and so forth. So all those players were people were, prominent in the development of the game. My parents are from Ohio, from outside of Cleveland. And so we regularly went to the Hall of Fame in Canton, and my dad knew a couple of the people there that he had known from his Ohio connections, and we would go down into the basement of the Hall of Fame, and they would show us their collection of books, which was, other than the Library of Congress, I think it's the largest collection of football books that there is. And at least we got a chance to see some books. Like, we recognized a lot of them, but there were certainly a lot of them that we didn't have. And back in those days, it was a little harder to, find them without some of the resources we have now. So we did that. So we'd spend hours down in the basement of the Hall of Fame, just going through their books and their library. And again, the Hall of Fame was an annual trip for us. That was part of the. We went to Hiram, where the Cleveland Browns practiced, and my mom taught, and my dad coached football and basketball and track there, and so that's where they met. So the Browns were there, the Hall of Fame, Paul Brown, the Cleveland Browns. I mean, all that was just that's how I grew up. So, and I've always enjoyed it. I've always been interested in it, and it's always fascinating for me to talk to people from that predate me, which I guess there aren't that many anymore, but there's a couple. And especially the coaching part of it, learn about the evolution of certain defenses or of certain techniques or how the game evolved. Before I was really introduced to it. One of the best experiences I had was in the 8th grade. My eighth grade coach played at Clemson, and we ran the single wing. And so that's the only time I've had any exposure to the single wing, but obviously that was a key part of the game, going all the way back into the, teens and 20s with, Rockneys, box and so forth. And then Lambeau took that to Green Bay, and then we evolved in the T formation. But everybody grew up playing T formation when I was a kid. So to have the opportunity to run the single wing for a year and just understand it, and that's obviously what my dad ran and what he played, and so we talked a lot about that. But that was a great experience for me, one that I really, really appreciate. Coach Mann ran it. I didn't really know it. None of us knew what it was. There was only a couple college teams that I think UCLA and Clemson. I don't know, were a couple of the last teams to run it. And then we actually, when I was at Andover, we played against it at Lawrenceville, and under Coach Kuffel, who now he ran it. That was in the early '70s, but he continued to run it at Lawrenceville Academy after that. So I didn't obviously play there, but we did play against it one year when I was in high school or in prep school, and so that was a great experience for me too. That I had an opportunity to do that. Again, and just while I'm on the subject, I'd say we've had so many conversations about great players and so forth. But one of the real, I think, challenges when you talk about great players in the National Football League is the two-way players versus the one-way players. And in our game today, everybody's essentially a one-way player, including the specialists. If you go back to a certain point in time, let's call it the 40s and certainly the 30s, but there were mostly all two-way players, and that was a different type of a player. So maybe they didn't excel as much in some skills as some of the current players do, but our current players don't have to play both ways, or they do in rare situations. I mean, Edelman's done it for us, Troy Brown did it for us, Vrabel did it for us, but that's a pretty short list. So that's a long answer to a short question, but thank you for getting me going on that. Yeah. Class, class will start tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Yeah.
I don't know how to follow that up. You guys have talked for 20 years about being game plan specific, and other coaches will talk about how amazing it is how you guys are able to toggle from being one thing to being the next on the fly. I'm wondering if wanting to be that way has sort of required you guys to look for a certain type of player regardless of position.
Well, yeah, I think, again, it's a function of your roster makeup and versatility. And, again, we see a lot of different things over the course of the year, offensively, defensively, and in the kicking game. And it's hard for, for us, for one size to fit all. We try to be competitive against all of those things. And to do that, I think you need players with a variety of skills, and some players that are able to transcend different positions, if you will, or different techniques depending on what you're facing and what you're up against. So I don't know. Again, that's just kind of the way I was brought up. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's just the way I look at the game. I want to try to match up against our opponent the best that we can, and sometimes that involves doing things that you haven't done the week before or you haven't done the month before, because this game's just different. And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you're able to find a pattern of things that you're able to build on week after week, and that certainly happens many times too. And there's a lot of advantages to that. So.
Is it fair to say intelligence is one piece of that for players to be able to go from one to the other?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is, again, I hear the phrase a lot on players. Well, once they have it, they have it. It might take them some reps or some experience to get it. Once they have it, they have it. That doesn't really help us too much, because each week can be a new week. So once you have it, you have it for that week, but you don't necessarily have it for the next week. So a lot of our learning is to a degree reteaching, re-game planning every week. So I think it takes a certain type of individual that can have the motivation and the discipline to continue to want to do that, to throw away last week's game plan, to forget about last week's keys and film and everything else, and move on to the next team. And start from scratch and start to just, rebuild the house each week. And then at the end of the week, move on and start on a new one. And that's not easy to do. I give our players a ton of credit. They work extremely hard. They prepare hard. They are very committed to trying to do what we ask them to do. And I really appreciate that, because I know we demand a lot, and they respond with a lot. So we have a great group. Couldn't ask for any better group.
Okay, we have one more question. Adam Beasley with the Miami Herald. Coach O'Shea has been part of your staff for the better part of a decade. What specifically has he done to make your team better?
Yeah, Chad's been with us for quite a while, and I knew Chad's dad, Mike. He and I were together with the Colts in '75, so I know his family and so forth. Chad's done a great job with the receivers, and worked very closely in developing those players and some of our other younger players in that receiving area at different positions and so forth. He's been he's done a good job of handling. That's primarily what it's been. It's been the receiver position, but he's done a great job of handling that for us. Okay, great. Thank you.